Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this event named the New Ecosystems of Audiovisual and Media Arts. In reality, what we're going to do for the whole day is to talk about this applied research program named Cultural Lab Platforming, or CLAP for friends, that we have been performing for the last 2 years. The day is packed and full of very interesting interventions, which will go in and around this program, the results that we have achieved, the things that we have found out and discovered, and some of the reflections that came out of these last 2 years. Before I pass the word to the first speaker of this morning, let me just tell you how the day will be organized. So we have a morning session, which will be held in English, as we have quite an international audience connected online. This is live streamed. And then we're going to have an afternoon with sessions being held in Italian and with more people in presence here. We are live streaming from the Open Laboratorio of the city of Modena, which is a place that attempts to contaminate languages, to build bridges between research and startups, the world of companies, the world of third sector, but mostly trying to create new collaborations around the possibilities of digital transformation applied mainly to the cultural and creative industries. I am Fabio Sgaragli, I'm head of innovation of Fondazione Gioco Brodolini, and I am lucky enough to be the coordinator of this space and even more lucky to be the moderator for this morning session. The morning session will see the greetings from the city of Modena, then we'll have the greetings from the UNESCO network of cultural cities. Then we're going to have the two directors of the CLAP program, Professor Gervese and Professor Fabri, which will help us to understand what CLAP is about and what we have done in the last 2 years. And then we're going to delve right into some of the reflections that came out of the program with Valeria D'Ambrosio and Antonella Capalbi that perform research within CLAP, and they also do research on a normal basis on the topic of CLAP. So I'm going to shut up for now and pass on the word to the first speaker of the morning, Mr. Andrea Bortolamasi, who is the council member responsible for the city of Modena, responsible for culture, youth policies, and university. So Andrea, please, the word is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Fabio. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to the final event of CLAP. A warm welcome, especially for the Uccn, okay, it's okay, the UNESCO Creative City. For us, it's important, this meeting. It's important for our city. The event is a part of the path that our city started as a UNESCO Creative City in the media art cluster. It's a part of a cultural growth which aim to create a new job opportunity and regenerate space and place to be used as cultural space. And the contamination between technology and humanism, between traditional and innovative craft are two goals of our city and are two goals of our cultural growth. Like many cultural sectors, the audiovisual and the media arts are undergoing a strong change. We want to lead, to guide this process. The city of Modena and its cultural scene, the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia, we think has the skill to lead this process. We want, we think that the future of culture want to live in Modena, in our city, and an appointment like today confirm it. Thank you, and I don't know, okay.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for being with us and for introducing some of the concepts that are actually key to this program CLAP. First of all, the importance of culture and creativity as a wide economic sector that contains in itself some of the industries that actually made a good percentage of GDP in Europe and in Italy, but also the importance of cities working with the cultural and creative industries and seeing cultural and creative industries as a lever for economic development, but also for social inclusion. The importance of cultural heritage and the ability to make it available to new audiences thanks to new media and digital technologies, the importance of engaging citizens in gaining a sense of identity from the cultural heritage that they have in their cities, but also the possibility to create new jobs, also thanks to the advancement of some of the dynamics that technologies bring to culture and creativity. So I think this was a short introduction to underline the importance of the next speaker that is connected live, remotely, Mr. Dominique Roland, who is the coordinator of the UNESCO Media Arts Sub-Network, which is a sub-network of the larger network of the UNESCO Cities for Culture, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, now has about 260 cities from around the world that recognize the importance of cultural and creative industries and culture and creativity in general as an opportunity for cities to create both economic development and social inclusion. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Mr. Dominique Roland. Okay. They are telling me that there are some problems in connecting, but that's normal. Digital technologies are not perfect as human beings. So I would like to probably give the word to Mr. Roland when he becomes available. And so we jump right into CLAP and right into what CLAP has been or attempted to be and what could be in the future. And with me, we have, as I anticipated, Vittorio Gervese from the University of Modena, Reggio Emilia, who is not only the focal point, the engine of CLAP, but also one of the co-promoters together with the city of Modena at the Open Laboratorio. So Vittorio, before passing the mic to you, I just wanted to speak a little bit about what CLAP meant for us as the Open Laboratorio and why we have engaged so excitingly in this venture with the University of Modena, Reggio Emilia. So the mission of this space that we are speaking out of this morning is, as I said, to try and build bridges across sectors, build bridges for new collaborations and new projects, and also to try and understand what digital technologies can bring to different sectors of the economy, and in particular to culture and performing arts. And so for us, it was key to take part in an applied research project, so guided by the university, but with the collaboration of other stakeholders in premise the Open Laboratorio, which actually try to make in reality happen what research discovers. And I must say that in the last 2 years, I personally was involved in some of the activities of the program. We have learned a big deal about what possibilities digital technologies can bring to culture and creativity. And one of the things I want to underline, and actually has to do with the fact that culture and creative industries are actually, as I said, a very good percentage of the current GDP, but they could be much more for our economies, apart from the job that they can do building a sense of identity and engaging citizens around the concepts of beauty, around the concepts of culture, of art. The new European Bauhaus initiative is one of the key initiatives of the European Commission, trying to bring together aesthetics, economics, and also business in trying to give Europe a new mission, a new agenda for economic development. So for us, one of the key lessons was the possibility to really scale up some of the good things that already happen within culture and creative industries. One of the limits is actually the growth and the dimension of the operators, the organizations, being them business or no-profit, that operate within this perimeter of culture and creative industries. And as we know, technologies, digital technologies in particular, have the possibility to build up structures online and the business models, online or offline, that can really leverage on what is already there, and so help them grow, generate more jobs, and generate more impact. So we're gonna, of course, talk about some of the results out of the program, but I wanted to stress the fact that this research program wasn't just a general theoretical reflection around what I just said, but also had one or two legs that actually worked with existing operators and stakeholders on cultural and creative industries, and in particular on two sectors, audiovisual and media arts, and try to understand how digital technologies could help those actors increase their scale, increase their impact, and increase their capacities to generate jobs. This is my side of the equation, but of course there is much more. And Vittorio, please complete the picture.
Thank you, Fabio.
It's open, it's open.
Okay. Thank you, Fabio, for your almost perfect introduction. So I have to add a few words only to present myself. I'm Vittorio Gervese, and together with my colleague Tommaso Fabri, who will be speaking shortly, I'm one of the two scientific coordinator, co-director of this research action project, CLAP, Cultural Lab Platforming, who carried out with the Municipality of Modena and Laboratorio Aperto. So thank you for those who are present here in Modena and those who are connected from different parts of the world, China, Brazil, Korea, Georgia, Portugal, and etc., etc. So thank you. And so when we conceived this project, we did not expect, we cannot imagine that the world will be shocked by pandemic and that we all will be locked in for a long time. So this project started not for a contingent need, but for a perspective and for a long time project. But in the meanwhile, platform became crucial for our life, not only for the consumption of commodities and goods, but also for the cultural field. So a research and a reflection about this issue is crucial for all the world, not only for Modena. And what we are presenting today is only a first step, a first result of this reflection that I hope we will continue together also with the UNESCO Creative Cities Network. And so I will give the floor to Tommaso Fabri, but I will also remember that you can intervene, you can take part to the discussion in the last part of this morning. So let me say, enjoy our reflection and see you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Vittorio. Thank you, everybody here and remote. Yes, I'm one of the two coordinator of this project that we are presenting today, and it was a great opportunity. Also, I am an academic from the local University of Modena, Reggio Emilia. My background, well, what I teach is management science, so maybe it's not the best perspective to look at cultural stuff and processes, but I will do my best and I will tell you something about what we've done. This city has undertaken significant investments in the digitization of its cultural heritage, and has found in the Center for the Digital Humanities, DH-MORE, at the University of Modena, Reggio Emilia, an important catalyst for the resources, skills, and collaborative wills of all local institutions, Fondazione di Modena, For those abroad, it's foundations that's derived from the former public local banking system. The university, the municipality, the resident cultural institutions. At the D.H. Moore Center, in collaboration with private bodies, digitization projects of historical archives are carried out, and artificial intelligence techniques are applied to improve the understanding and the use of cultural heritage. Automatic retrieval, recognition, and transcriptions of historic manuscripts, augmented reality, 3D modeling, and virtual tours, social robotics, and gamification in museums. In this work, in these projects, two dimensions are always, although variably, combined: the technical and the social. The technical dimension is that of digitization, the encoding, in this peculiar case, of archives, historic artifacts, cultural heritage in general, into a digital format that can be processed, transmitted, and stored by researchers and citizens at large. The social dimension is that of digitalization, and it concerns the ways in which social life or social relationships are organized through and around digital technologies. Now, the distinction digitization, digitalization draws from, which is drawn from Leonardo Trim, points to the problematic relationship between technology and society. Is it technology that imposes itself on society, structuring social relationships according to its design principles? Or is it people intentions and interactions that eventually give meaning to and provide technology with its instrumentality? In practice, and adapted to the embryonic state of the digital cultural heritage of this city, this problematic relationship between technology and society raises the following question: how is it that once digitized, our city's cultural heritage might be enjoyed by some local, national, or international cultural audiences? How can we move from digitization to digitalization? And this is a very digital humanities kind of question. If we look back at the book by Jeffrey Schnapp and colleagues in 2012, and if we look at the case studies presented there, the book was entitled Digital Humanities. These case studies all deal with new experimental ways of adjusting or innovating the use of digitized cultural artifacts, given that, I quote, artifacts created by digital technologies that live in digital environments are comparatively different from artifacts created by the world of print in terms of material composition, authorship, meaning making, circulation, reading, viewing, navigation, etc. Software scientists in Italy use the word valorizzazione. Literally, valorizzazione means value making, but if you look at the dictionary, you also find exploitation. Now, in Italy, software scientists use the word valorizzazione to indicate the process by which a cultural digital artifact is made usable and enjoyable to an audience. So with CLAP project, we aimed at equipping ourselves, our institutional partners, and our cultural and creative community with concepts and tools that would serve the valorizzazione of our digitized cultural heritage, and more broadly of our digitalized cultural production. In so doing, we also expected to gain some better understanding of the dynamics of a digitalized cultural production and consumption and of its governance. It has been a kind of incursion into the science and practice of cultural platforming. And my following remarks will briefly report on what we have done and found. So something about cultural platforming and something about the project. About cultural platforming. When we commenced our project, it was already clear to cultural and creative industry observers and also to academic critics that the term platform is elusive. The so-called platform excuse, which goes, they are just platforms, and purports the alleged neutrality of digital platforms with respect to the cultural content uploaded and disseminated, could not hold anymore in the face of the already ample evidence that private corporate platforms, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft in the West, and Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent in China, were radically reconfiguring the process of production, distribution, and monetization of cultural content. Evidently, digital platforms not only enable and facilitate cultural interactions in a way that might also threaten the dominance of the former industrial capitalistic mode of production of cultural content, and somehow empowering cultural producers against the existing institutional and power structure, digital platforms also organize and steer those interactions, formalizing and formatting cultural contents and relations, and making them contingent. This is a concept I'm picking from Poel and Nieborg, 2018. Because cultural content becomes contingent because it becomes malleable and open to constant revision according to the datafied user feedback provided by the platform owner. I quote, as cultural producers transform into platform complementers, they are incentivized to change a traditionally linear production process into an iterative, data-driven process in which content is constantly altered to optimize for platform distribution and monetization. So as cultural content producer access the platform APIs, the application programming interfaces, and the SDKs, the software development kits, they become platform complementers. And their content strategies and their relations with their end users are formatted and articulated according to the platform computational backend, which stands up as a top-down, rule-bound set of tools, which the cultural producers cannot elude if they want their content to be generated and uploaded. So platform infrastructures not only interfere with the curation of cultural content, but also with its quality assessment. As the traditional the traditional editorial logic, which is driven by expert choices, is contrasted by a new algorithmic logic that pushes content producers to user-driven strategizing, that is aligning their content strategies with platform-defined markers of popularity rather than traditional quality indicators. The delicacy of this issue becomes an alert if we consider the network effect. So roughly speaking, is the phenomenon by which the user value of a service, let's think about a platform as a service, depends on the number of its users. Think about Airbnb or Booking. Now, the offering that is coming from few big private platforms of APIs, SDKs, integrated with payment systems and data analytics was and is making them comparatively more attractive to the vast majority of cultural private businesses than self-operated digital properties. The consequence is the increasing concentration of agents, interactions in a world of traffic, of cultural traffic, inside few and maybe fewer soon platform behemoth as the fulfillment of the intrinsic winner-take-all attitude of platformized economic arenas. This peculiar monopolistic tendency seems to distinguish platform capitalism from industrial capitalism, and its negative implications on creative and cultural work are already well documented. But, so this is like the dark side, but by the time that we commenced the project, we already had instances of the non-deterministic nature of platformization. So beside a scenario of increasing platform dependency and lock-in, cultural producers worldwide were promoting platform practices. And I'm picking the notion from Duffy and colleagues 2019. Platform practices are strategies and experiences, expression of creativity, labor, and citizenship that shape the platformization of cultural production. This is consistent with the theoretical framework that we favor about the relationship between technology and society, which goes that there seems to be always some recursivity between institution structures and agency practices. And consequently, in the case of platformization, we might claim and also find evidence that of the effects of bottom-up platform practices on platforms' shape and functioning, just as the other way around. Possibly, such recursivity, so between the structure and the practices, would be empirically associated with some kind of awareness on the part of the cultural producers about the features and the dynamics of cultural digital platforming. In addition, this is a second but, so it's a second argument that contrasts with the first one, so the effects of platformization on power structures. So in addition, by the time that we commenced the project, observers of the increasing concentration of the production and consumption of some cultural segments onto few private platforms had started to warn about the effects on cultural production and consumption of profit maximization, which is their only one operating logic. All cultural heritages and productions that are not commercially palatable, we might also say that would not pass the algorithmic gateway of popularity, will not gain access to the platform and would not be made available to any audience. And this is undoubtedly a serious threat to cultural variety and abundance, and to cultural innovation as well, let alone the sustainability of the many micro businesses that populate the cultural and creative industry. Hence, upgrading cultural policy to the digital age might consist in the designing and making of one or more public platforms for cultural production and fruition. Such public platforms might host and disseminate content, not necessarily or always free of charge, that otherwise would not have any circulation. And in so doing, public platforms would support the economics of the many fragile micro businesses that risk to be pushed out of business by some black boxed maximizing algorithm. But profit maximization also contrasts with radical experimentation, which is and always will be paramount for culture and creativity. And a public platform could be where radical experimentation takes place. Given the diluted accountability standards for public money compared to short-term return requisites of private financial reporting. Again, just as the idea of platform practices call for some kind of awareness on the part of cultural producers, the idea of a public platform for cultural production and fruition calls for some kind of awareness on the part of policy makers about the features and the dynamics of cultural platforming. So I think we may say that with the CLAP project, we aimed at contributing to this awareness on the part of the cultural producers and on the part of the policy makers. So I will now tell you briefly about the structure and the activities of the project. Let me get some water. We worked on 3 axes: training, so research, training, and design prototyping. Of course, we had some public engagement and dissemination activities like the event of today. Research was aimed at putting together a first-hand repository of concepts and use cases. We hired 2 researchers, you will hear from them shortly, that brought us evidence of the transformations in best in cultural production and consumption driven by digitization in 2 segments of the cultural industry, the audiovisual and the media arts. We focused on these 2, first of all, because we are interested and engaged as a city with them. Secondly, because audiovisual and media arts are, so to speak, more prone to digitization compared to other cultural products. And therefore, the way they are now interested by platformization processes might be informative for what might happen in the future to other less digitalized cultural segments. We networked with people in the two segments. We selected a regional group of them, numerous and heterogeneous enough to represent the industrial structure of the segment. For example, in the short film segment, we engaged with regional film commission, filmmakers, producers, and festival organizers. And we brought them into a classroom for a 2-day training in platform design. We learned a toolkit made up of concept and canvases, and we practiced it in work teams. From a business perspective, our trainers have a background in business modeling. A platform is a multi-sided interactional device where agents can act both as seller, so producers, and as buyer or consumers. The word prosumer is a clash of the two, so that value generation occurs horizontally from many to many, rather than vertically, as in the traditional one-sided pipeline markets and businesses that operate from one to many. The platform can be physical, digital, or hybrid, and it usually leverages on existing transaction networks. They're called ecosystems, making them more efficient by means of reducing transaction costs, making easier otherwise difficult transactions, or making new transactions possible. So conceived, the design of a platform starts the identification of the entities in the ecosystem, basically peer producers and peer consumers, of course, on top of the platform owner. And with the identification of a core transaction, which is the very basic economic interaction that makes convenient to the agents to be and to act inside the platform. This is the transactional machine. The other component of the platform design is the learning machine, which is the design of the process through which an entity can evolve and thrive inside the platform so that its motivation to participate remains high or even increases. A couple of months after this training, we met again for grasping the fruits of that exposure to platform design principles and tools. In a workshop mode, we tried to design paper prototypes of possible digital platforms in the two selected segments. In the process, cultural prosumers, so the cultural producers that we engaged in the project, they had the chance to disclose their logic of action, to check for true antagonism or complementarity between them and other entities, to search for transactional solutions throughout the supply chain that might increase value generation by reducing costs or by making new transactions possible. And this design process was all to the benefit of this prototype design was all to the benefit also of a potential platform owner, which may be public, a cultural policymaker, maybe public and private, or private. Here's my conclusion. Experimental project either come to a dead end or call for additional effort. In this case, I think we should, as a city, continue exploring and understanding the structure and dynamics of digitalized cultural production and consumption. And we should keep ideating and designing updated governance solutions and tools. To start with, we might, on the one hand, focus on the still dark side of cultural platforming. And this can be done by taking a good look at the tense relationship between media infrastructure and content creation. As it is still unclear whether platforms truly enable new modes of production, new genres, and more diverse symbolic expressions, or on the contrary, constrain cultural production. On the other hand, on the more promising and possibly more urgent side of cultural platforming, I think we could try to manufacture and test some kind of at least partially public cultural platform, not only as a policy-making laboratory, but also as a knowledge-creating device. We need our public institutions to keep up with the technical and regulatory intricacies of identity, intellectual property, and citizenship in a digital cultural space.
Thank you very much, Tommaso, because I think that you touched upon many interesting and sophisticated points that came out of our 2 years of work. And I'd love to actually comment or delve more into some of them. The dilemma between public and private, some of the you know, the points of attention on the privacy and the cultural production versus the profit maximization. Some of the articulation of the process that we have followed, and actually the process was interesting in itself because we had academia looking at these dynamics, but also playing with some tools coming out of the business world and the startup world in particular, lean innovation, lean management, canvases, business models, service models. So it was, you know, we could talk about what we have learned along the way, also in designing the process by which we came out with these reflections. But unfortunately, we are going to have to wait for that. And actually, this is an invitation for the audience here in presence and the audience connected remotely, because now I think that we have managed to connect Mr. Roland, that I shall remind us all is the coordinator of the UNESCO Media Arts Subnetwork, and I'd like to welcome his intervention before moving on.
Membre de l'Université de Modena et d'Émilie-Romagne et du laboratoire Aperto, chers participants, je suis très honoré d'avoir été invité en tant que coordinateur du sous-réseau des villes arts numériques, villes créatives de l'UNESCO pour les arts numériques, à inaugurer ce séminaire porté par l'Université de Modena et d'Émilie-Romagne, la municipalité de Modena et le laboratoire Aperto.
Dear representatives of the Municipality of Modena, dear members of the University of Modena and Emilia-Romagna and the Aperto Laboratorio, dear participants, I am very honored to have been invited as coordinator of the UNESCO Creative Cities for Media Arts Subnetwork to inaugurate this seminar supported by the University of Modena and Emilia-Romagna, the Municipality of Modena, and the Aperto Laboratorio.
Au nom des 22 villes qui composent le sous-réseau, je tiens tout d'abord à féliciter la ville de Modena et son maire pour son intégration au sein du réseau des villes créatives de l'UNESCO. Modena est la première ville italienne à être reconnue ville créative dans ce domaine. Et c'est donc avec un intérêt et enthousiasme que les 22 villes du sous-réseau des arts numériques ont accueilli cette arrivée au sein du RVCU.
On behalf of the 22 cities from our sub-network, I would like first to congratulate the city of Modena and its mayor for joining the Uccn last November. Modena is the first Italian city to be recognized as a creative city in the field of media arts. And it's therefore with great interest and enthusiasm that the cities welcomed its arrival in our sub-network.
Je souhaite, dans un premier temps, vous présenter les enjeux et les priorités du réseau des villes créatives de l'Unesco et plus spécifiquement du sous-réseau des arts numériques pour mettre l'accent, en quelque sorte, sur quelques projets exemplaires, quelques bonnes pratiques, avant d'évoquer dans un deuxième temps la contribution de Modena au réseau et les perspectives de collaboration que son arrivée ouvre.
I will try to be short, but I would like to start by presenting the issues and priorities of the Uccn and of course of our subnetwork and to highlight some flagship projects that we are leading together before talking about Modena's contribution to the network and the prospects for collaboration, which could be linked to the club projects.
Alors, le RVCU, le réseau des villes créatives de l'UNESCO, a été créé en 2004 et aujourd'hui est composé de 295 villes qui sont issues, ça représente à peu près 80 nationalités.
Created in 2004, the Uccn is now composed of 2,095 cities from all around the world. It's about 80 nationalities.
Ce réseau qui promeut la coopération entre les villes ayant identifié la créativité comme un facteur stratégique de développement urbain durable.
This network promotes cooperation between cities that have identified creativity as a strategic factor for sustainable urban development.
Le point très important, c'est que les villes s'engagent à mettre en œuvre sur le plan à la fois stratégique et opérationnel les 17 objectifs de développement durable des Nations Unies.
One key point of that is that cities are committed to implementing both strategically and operationally the 17 SDGs of the United Nations 2030 agenda.
Alors, à titre d'exemple, les objectifs 4, 5, 9, 17 sont, si on prend le 4, le 5, l'éducation, qui est un objectif majeur, évidemment l'inclusion sociale, c'est-à-dire la coparticipation des habitants dans le processus créatif de la ville, et puis 9, on est sur des questions d'innovation, et notamment sur les objectifs 17, nous sommes sur l'expression de la diversité culturelle.
So among others, the goal 4, which is about education, the goal 5, which is about social inclusion and participation of the citizens in the projects, the goal 9, which is about innovation, and the last one, the 17 goal, which is about cultural diversity, are very key for us.
Si nous regardons plus particulièrement donc le réseau des villes créatives, mais surtout le sous-réseau des 22 villes, eh bien nous avons, au-delà des 12 villes européennes, nous avons des villes qui collaborent dans cet ensemble, comme Sapporo au Japon, Changsha en Chine, Gwangju en Corée du Sud. Nous avons Tel Aviv en Israël, Dakar au Sénégal, Cali en Colombie, Guadalajara au Mexique, Campina Grande au Brésil, aussi aux États-Unis ou encore Toronto pour le Canada.
If we now look more specifically at our subnetwork of creative cities for media arts, this subnetwork brings together 22 cities. In addition to the 12 European cities, this subnetwork invites us to collaborate with Sapporo in Japan, Changsha in China, Gwangju in South Korea, but also Tel Aviv in Israel, Dakar in Senegal, Cali in Colombia, Guadalajara in Mexico, Campina Grande in Brazil, Austin in the United States, and Toronto in Canada.
Cette diversité des villes, de par leur taille, leur PIB, leurs composantes socioculturelles ou encore leur représentation, sans quoi les arts numériques, évidemment, signifient pour ces villes un point stratégique, marque une vraie richesse en termes de collaboration, d'apprentissage mutuel entre les villes et de dialogue interculturel.
This diversity of cities, by their size, their social, cultural components, of course, but also their apprehension of what media arts mean, marks a real richness in terms of collaborations, mutual learning, and intercultural dialogue.
Notre sous-réseau s'est structuré au fil du temps en 5 groupes de travail. Alors, je vais vous les énumérer. Ils sont avec des objectifs principaux. Donc, en premier lieu, offrir une plateforme d'échange et de transfert d'expertise et de savoir-faire entre artistes, experts, municipalités et différentes questions portant sur le développement urbain durable, c'est-à-dire l'intégration des arts et des cultures numériques dans les politiques publiques, la prise en compte des objectifs de développement durable dans les politiques, bien sûr.
Our sub-network, which has been divided over time into 5 working groups for more efficiency, has 3 main goals that I would like to share with you. First, to provide a platform for exchange and transfer of expertise and know-how between artists, experts, and municipalities on different issues related to sustainable urban development, integration of media arts and cultures in public policies, taking into account, of course, the SDGs.
Le deuxième objectif, développer des modes de soutien innovants aux artistes numériques et aux entrepreneurs, évidemment, des technologies adaptées à leurs besoins et aux évolutions contemporaines.
Secondly, to develop innovative ways of supporting media artists and entrepreneurs from the cultural and creative industries that are adapted to their needs and to contemporary evolutions.
Bien sûr, et ce qui est très important je le dis pour la ville de Modena dans l'avenir, c'est inclure les citoyens dans les projets d'art numérique à la fois inclusifs et participatifs afin de promouvoir l'accès aux technologies numériques et le dialogue interculturel.
And finally, one point which is crucial for the cities and of course for Modena in the near future is to include citizens in inclusive and participatory digital arts projects to promote access to digital technologies and intercultural dialogue.
Et bon, encouragés par la nature hybride et transdisciplinaire des arts numériques, les villes ont pu développer au fil du temps des approches innovantes et transversales, démontrant ainsi leur capacité à répondre aux enjeux d'un monde en constante mutation, notamment en cas de crise comme celle que nous vivons avec la pandémie et la guerre en Ukraine.
Encouraged by the hybrid and transdisciplinary nature of media arts, cities have been able to develop innovative and transversal approaches over time, demonstrating their ability to respond to the challenges of a constantly changing world, especially in the case of crises such as those that we are experiencing with the pandemic and of course the war in Ukraine.
Parmi les initiatives marquantes mises en place ces dernières années, je souhaiterais vous distinguer aujourd'hui et plus particulièrement un projet qui s'intitule City to City.
Among the most outstanding initiatives set up in recent years in our subnetwork, I would like to single out one of them, the multi-partnership project, which is called City to City.
Alors, City to City, c'est un projet de collaboration artistique en ligne qui est né en pleine pandémie, c'est-à-dire en 2020, et a été reconduit en 2021. Et notre objectif est de reconduire chaque année avec de nouvelles villes comme Modena, j'espère, eh bien, puissent y participer.
City to City is a collaborative online art project that was born in the midst of the pandemic in 2020 and has been renewed in 2021. Our goal now is to renew it every year and that new cities like Modena can participate in.
City to City eh bien, consiste à offrir la possibilité à des artistes de mener des résidences et de créer des œuvres en ligne sur une thématique déterminée en amont, qu'elle soit présentable, bien sûr, et également sous une forme physique. Ce projet a été récompensé en novembre 2021 par la fondation Santa Gata pour l'économie culturelle par le prix du meilleur projet international.
With City to City, we offer the possibility to artists to carry out residencies online and to create online works on a theme determined beforehand that can also be presented in physical form. So this project was awarded in November 2021 by the Fondazione Santa Gata for the cultural economy with the prize Best International Project.
Alors, en exploitant pleinement le potentiel de la collaboration sur la technologie, ce projet a généré de nouvelles dynamiques et de nouveaux moyens de collaboration et de diffusion artistique afin de garantir l'accès de citoyens aux biens culturels en dépit des restrictions qui étaient liées à la distanciation, vous en doutez, sociale, ouvrant ainsi la voie à futurs projets innovants à une échelle mondiale cette fois-ci.
By fully exploiting the collaborative potential of technology, this project has generated new dynamics and new means of artistic collaboration and dissemination to ensure citizens' access to cultural goods, despite the restrictions of social distancing, paving the way for future innovative projects on a global scale.
Alors, je vous propose d'aller voir, pour plus d'informations, d'aller sur notre site du sous-réseau et de manière à voir sur ce site web, ce que vous découvrirez, c'est à la fois le profil des 22 villes, mais aussi les projets marquants que nous avons réalisés ensemble.
Please visit our website of Creative Cities for Media Arts. You will find a lot of information about all of our projects, of course, but also about City to City.
Bien, c'est dans ce contexte que la désignation de Modena au sein du RVCU marque une reconnaissance internationale de la stratégie mise en place par la municipalité depuis 2014 pour soutenir et en même temps développer le secteur des arts numériques et des ICC avec la création d'un écosystème reposant sur, en premier lieu, un investissement conséquent dans le domaine de la recherche. Ça, c'est un point très important. Permettez-moi de citer le laboratoire Aperto, bien sûr, mais également le Centre de recherche international en vision et intelligence artificielle de l'Académie d'intelligence artificielle, qui sont des références à l'échelle européenne. En second lieu, bien sûr, l'existence de plusieurs lieux et festivals qui travaillent en synergie pour faire connaître le rayonnement des arts numériques et des cultures aussi numériques, mais comme le Centro Musica 71 Music Hub Ago Fabrice Cultural et la Biennale Node ou encore Modena Smart Life. Il y a bien sûr enfin l'importance des ICC avec 5200 entreprises locales sur le territoire de Modena, pourvoyeuses de 13 000 emplois, ce qui est un sujet, je dirais, le plus important évidemment, puisque l'emploi fait partie, évidemment, entre dans les 17 ODD.
In this context, the designation of Modena within the Uccn marks an international recognition of the strategy led by the Municipality of Modena since 2014 to support and develop the digital arts and the cultural and creative industries field with the creation of an ecosystem based on, first, a substantial investment in the field of research. Let me mention the Aperto Laboratorio, but also the International Research Center for Vision and Artificial Intelligence, which are references on a European scale. Secondly, the existence of several venues and festivals that work in synergy, like Centro Musica 71, Ago Fabrice Culturali, the Node Biennial, of course, and Modena Smart Life. And finally, the importance of the cultural and creative industries in Modena.
C'est grâce à cet engagement de la municipalité, des acteurs locaux et l'existence de ces écosystèmes que Modena a pu rentrer dans ce réseau. Alors, pour autant, comme vous le savez, être ville créative n'est pas une fin en soi. C'est même pas un label, c'est un engagement. Et aussi, ça représente un encouragement à approfondir ce travail en réseau avec d'autres villes. Et ce lien, bien sûr, comme l'énoncé de la mission du RVCU, de l'agenda 2030 des Nations Unies. Il s'agit donc d'un engagement conséquent que Modena a d'ores et déjà commencé à relever en intégrant les ODD dans ses politiques publiques et en démontrant sa volonté d'apporter une réelle valeur ajoutée au sous-réseau à travers son plan d'action.
However, as you know, being a creative city is not an end in itself, but it's an encouragement to deepen this networking with other cities in line with the UCCN's mission statements and the United Nations Agenda 2030. So it's the commitment of the municipality and local actors and the existence of this vibrant ecosystem that Modena has been able to join is crucial now. But as you know, it's not an end in itself, and it's There refer significant commitments that Modena has already begun to take on by integrating the SDGs into its public policies and demonstrating its willingness to provide real added value to the sub-network through its action plan.
Ce séminaire contribue à lui tout seul aux enjeux de notre sous-réseau en questionnant certains axes de recherche et de développement appliqués aux industries créatives et culturelles. À la lecture du programme et des intervenants, c'est vrai que ce séminaire s'annonce très prometteur. Je vous souhaite une très belle journée, riche en discussions et en échanges. Buongiorno et à presto.
This seminar alone contributes to the challenges of our subnetwork by questioning certain research and development axes applied to the creative and cultural industries. From the program and the speakers, this seminar looks very promising. I wish you a very nice day, rich in discussions and exchanges. Buongiorno e a presto.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roland. I think that you stressed a few of the things that we care about in this seminar, but I would say in general, in the city of Modena and the intervention from the UNESCO network of cities for media arts actually was a praise to the city of Modena that was recently accepted in the club as a UNESCO city for media arts. And I think that this seminar today is probably one of the first contributions that the city of Modena will make to the network, and we look forward to the contributions that the city of Modena will make in the future on the topic and on the network. And there was also another thing that I think was stressed well enough in the intervention from Mr. Roland. And in my previous role as a European Commission expert on urban development and city innovation, I am aware of both the importance of cities when it comes to local development and the development in general of our member states, but also on the other side, the importance of cooperation that he named the program City to City, but in general, the possibility for cities to exchange ideas, models, experimentation, pilots, and to try and learn together out of these experimentations to create local policies that favor local economic development and social inclusion. So thank you very much. And now I think we're gonna more and more go into some of the details of what CLAP was about and generated for us as a community here and around the laboratory. And I'd like to pass on the mic to Valeria D'Ambrosio, art historian and curator, and one of the people, part of the team that managed CLAP. So, Valeria.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. First of all, for having me in this interesting panel, and thanks to all the experts who preceded me for sharing such precious information in this public conclusion of the CLAP project. As Fabio said, I'm an art historian and contemporary art curator. And within the CLAP project, I produced a research project dealing with the media art practices in dialogue with public and urban space. So I'm going to share my screen. At least I'm going to try. Okay. All right. Just to show you a few slides which were selected from the presentation that I'm making this afternoon, and that I hope, although it's a small selection, that it will give you a summarized idea of the concepts that I've developed through my research. So the research I conducted last year, and which is, as I said, resulting in my talk this afternoon, starts with some key points in the interpretation of the term media arts associated to urban and public space in general. Basically, I've reconstructed a sort of time path where media arts can be placed at the end of a cycle born at the beginning of the previous century out of this increasingly close relationship between technological means, scientific skills, and experimental artistic practices and creative languages. So situating media arts within a sociocultural evolutionary process of the contemporary world has allowed me to identify a first substantial definition that assumes a relationship between artistic and creative languages and technical and scientific skills, as I just said. New disciplines that emerged in the second half of the 20th century, such as communication technologies, cybernetics, computer graphics, artificial intelligence, holography, or the CGI, computer-generated imagery, but also the extension of the network with satellite communication and fiber optics that allows an extraordinary access to information, have provided us with new images and virtual worlds, new aesthetics, new ways of expressing ourselves visually, but also new tools that are replacing our canonical languages and forms of creations and experimentation. Therefore, what we can say, technically speaking, is that a media artwork must, first of all, satisfy three fundamental interactions with the technological medium: production and preservation through the medium, distribution and exchange through the medium, reception and experience through the medium. However, we all know that art cannot be defined only as a technique, otherwise it would be just decoration or craftsmanship. Rather, it's imbued with intellectual and philosophical and aesthetics principles and concepts that make media arts a true art form. So today, at a time when the reciprocal contribution between art and technology has gone far beyond purely functional aspects to take on a broader cultural importance, I've analyzed how media increasingly shape and define our perception of the world. What you see in the slide, Siegfried Zielinski, in Deep Time of the Media, he theorizes, he talks about media arts as an experimental artistic research always balanced between, I quote, rational inquiry and imaginative vision. And in fact, we could define media arts as artistic practices arising from these intertwining, metamorphic, often ambiguous relationships of dependence and interaction between the fields of audiovisual, sound engineering, information technology, and the digital world in general. For those of you who are following us this afternoon, I will take into consideration a series of international artists and art projects from the 50s and 60s, like the one you see on the screen, which is pretty, well, outdated or at least historicized, but it was a very pioneering work in the history of contemporary art up until today, to build a more concrete picture of the ways in which media art practices are developed within public and urban space. We will see the media arts emerge today as a heterogeneous, complex, spontaneous, and irregular cultural phenomenon that is developing in direct proportion to the circulation and democratization of the most advanced technologies in our increasingly smart cities. Therefore, after having tried to technically describe what media arts are, and in order to conceptually now define media arts, I have built a sort of keyword system in which different categories, when arranged together, tend to lose their definite borders in order to create this varied world of artistic creation. And we will see more precisely, these categories have emerged out of the artworks examined. But of course, I will show you just 3 examples in this occasion. Media arts is definitely user art. Media artworks often have to be activated by the viewer, who thus becomes the user. Without the actions of the users who activate the work, this would not exist. Media arts are therefore participatory and interactive. And because of these characteristics, they often help to test and forge new relationships between urban space and private space. One example is this one on the screen, is Tourmente, an interactive installation by French artist Jean Dubois, which is displayed on one of the many digital screens we encounter in metropolitan streets. On the screens are portraits of people who look sad or distressed, and there's a message inviting passers-by to find out more about why the portrait subjects look so upset by calling a phone number indicated. Through the call, the smartphone connects to the screen and passers-by are invited to blow into the microphone of their devices. Immediately, the viewer's breath turns into a breeze that caresses the character's face, but gradually it becomes an increasingly strong wind that messes up the people's hair and distorts their faces, their physiognomy. So once the viewer runs out of breath, the connection is automatically interrupted and the wind dies down, suggesting that the user's interaction with the images on the display are the cause of the character restlessness. So in this work, the use of a large urban screen inverts completely the conventions of the relationship between public and private space, as you can see. By linking a mobile, private, personal interface to the screens commonly used for advertising and marketing purposes, the artist allows the viewer to modify the use of the screens in the public space and creates this direct connection between the intimacy of the human body and the monumentality of the architecture. The human body is blown up to the scale and size of architecture. Another category is definitely sustainability. Media arts is, or at least can be, sustainability. In today's highly computerized society, we can observe the birth of a real new science that analyzes the interactions between natural and artificial organisms and the environment in which they live. And it's known as cyber ecology. Media arts fits into this new perception of ecology to satisfy the human desire to transcend the limits of the body and to shift the point of view from human to more than human in a sort of hybridization, but also to act collectively in response to the impacts of human activity on the planet. So in 2015, again, the United States Climate Conference in Paris was accompanied by this monumental work designed for the occasion by Ian Thomas. Titled Human Energy, the work was designed site-specific for the Eiffel Tower and is perhaps the largest participatory work ever created. In fact, the artist had invited over 75 million athletes connected to the Runtastic app to provide their energy in the form of calories. But at the same time, a group of mathematical researchers collected all the tweets sent during the COP21 conference to be decomposed into energy, but in this case, in the form of ideas. So the physical energy was sent directly to a huge computer installed on the second floor of the tower and then released in the air by white lights projected from the top floor. At the same time, the mental energy was translated into the keywords coming from Twitter and projected onto the tower. And of course, among them was, for example, the slogan 1.5 degrees, the famous temperature limit threshold that we should not exceed to contain global warming. Also, a self-sufficient village with sport fields, bicycles, dance floors, exhibition spaces, and even a fab lab with informative workshops and what art and design can do for the environment was installed under the Eiffel Tower. So in this case, anyone who wanted to participate in the production of energy in this large human power station through the Human Energy app could ride a bike, dance, run or play, and thus send a message of individual and collective action to fight against climate change. My last category for now cannot help but be emotion. Because just as any art forms that it's worth to be called art, media arts is emotion, must be emotion. And the rise of data-driven cities asks important questions on the nature of urbanscape and how we perceive it emotionally through the technologies at our disposal. If we reflect on the data we produce every single moment that we move in a city, if we focus on the origin of information, how we feed it and what happens to the data collected by smart cities, we can discover that the cities we live in are full of hidden stories and that the data we produce can be used in many more human ways. This work, Everything, Every Time, is a work by Japanese artist Nao Matsuda, made in 2017 in Manchester for the Future Everything Festival. The work takes the form of a public art installation that uses real-time data, transforming the city data streams into poetic narratives that are captured on displays placed in different neighborhoods around the city of Manchester. The work retrieves data from sensors that measure things like weather, traffic, and public transportation, for example, to tell a collective story about the citizens and about their daily life within the city. So as people interact with the city, an algorithm generates an ephemeral, anonymous, poetic narration that passes around different locations, like a city, a garden center, like the one that you see in the picture, but also a public library, a university square, or just a bus stop. So there's a poem next to the picture that you can read and that has been generated by this algorithm. And in its simplicity, the work is a powerful meditation on the ubiquity of technology in urban space, on the data passing daily through the fabric of the city, and the role that they play in our lives. So to briefly conclude this short intervention, but I invite you all, if you have an interest in deepening these contents, as I said, I will do it later during the afternoon. I think that today we must reconsider public space, which by its nature, as we all know, is a place of encounter and an exchange. And then when shaped by networks, technologies, and digital platforms, allows even more diverse communities to come together and generate knowledge and experience through exploration and participation. In the era of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think there's an opportunity for cultural institutions to reconsider their civic role within an ever-expanding and fluid digital culture. Therefore, developing the relationship between digital technology, art practices, and cultural heritage means, at least for me today, embracing a more democratic, multi-perspective, and dialogic engagement within our societies. So I thank you for the attention, and I hope to see you later in the afternoon, and I leave the floor to, to Fabio. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Thank you, Valeria. I just wanted to thank you and stress a couple of points out of your very interesting presentation. Because of course, you know, some people attending in presence or live may not be as you know, in depth into the issues as you are, or as the club team is. And what I, as you know, one of those that are not technically speaking so much into the knowledge that you have studied for years, but some of the things that I've taken home from your presentation, if I understood well, is that first of all, media arts, which is one of the two focuses of CLAP in the last 2 years. So now we're going to move on to the next one. But before we do that, first one, media arts is one way to look at ways in which there can be cross-media fertilization, cross languages, a way to engage the user or the benefit explaining to us before. And also one thing that I really found interesting is that the examples that you shared with us were all, and of course there is a logic behind it, they were all embedded in the city and use the city as a with and to interact with. And I think those are examples and reflections that can serve well the city of Modena in its new role as UNESCO City of Media Arts in terms of imagining ways in which we can fulfill that promise and the role that Modena has taken. So thank you very much for that. We'll try to make the most out of what you shared with us. And that gives me the occasion also to remind us all that in the afternoon, we're going to look even more deep into both the audiovisual and the media arts focuses of CLAP, together with Valeria, Antonella, and more speakers coming in. And the afternoon is going to be moderated by Vittorio Gervese, and I will leave after lunch the floor to him for that. Last thing before we move on to Antonella is that we shared on Zoom the links to two things. The intervention of Tommaso, so you can read it again and try and really go into the sophistication of the intervention of Tommaso. And also we shared the link to an online article available publicly, written by Antonella and Vittorio, if I'm not mistaken. And sorry, Tommaso, Antonella, and Vittorio, if I'm not mistaken. And we'll try and make available those two links plus the slides that Valeria and Antonella are sharing with us, both with the Zoom participants and with the participants present here today. So, Antonella, thank you for your patience. And now we're going to move on to the audiovisual. Please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Antonella Capalbi, a research fellow at the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia within CLEP, and I will briefly show the results of my research about the impact of platforms on the specific side of the audiovisual industry. In order to analyze the ongoing process of platformization, I will start from a theoretical framework related to the impact of the platforms on the audiovisual industry. Then I will analyze some platforms of audiovisual contents that I've considered as best practices in order to highlight opportunities and obviously risks connected to the ongoing process of platformization. So starting from the theoretical framework, we can say that digitalization has been changing the methods of production, distribution, and use of audiovisual products according to a process of platforming and platformization. Most audiovisual contents are now available via streaming platforms through a wide range of devices such as smartphones, smart TVs, video game consoles, and so on. And so this has empowered the process of media and cultural convergence highlighted by Jenkins, which is strictly connected to this so-called streaming revolution of production, distribution, and use of audiovisual contents. More specifically, we can observe that during the 20th century, the audiovisual industry was characterized by the so-called Hollywood model, which was a Fordist pipe-based model in which a small circle of producers offered their products to many consumers according to the classic value chain model. The platform model, on the contrary, has introduced a new mindset that thinks horizontally or tries to think horizontally by connecting producers and consumers within a digital environment, by breaking down space-time boundaries, by controlling data, and by simplifying the supply chain. So we can observe that the audiovisual industry has undergone a transition from monomedia industry to multimedia industry because now the use and the distribution and the production of audiovisual contents is connected to different digital devices, different platforms, and different media. And so we can observe that a new ecosystem as born, and this new audiovisual ecosystem is based on some fundamental elements that are contents, many contents, cheapness, and control over data. So we can observe that even the audiovisual field has undergone a transition to companies with a service provider role, which a very user-based model. We can observe that this new ecosystem is a very user-based ecosystem and is characterized by a new kind of audience. Indeed, the new audience, for example, can enjoy, as I said, lots of audiovisual contents, and for this reason, users are more discerning. And this is typical of the so-called prosumer culture, already highlighted, in which users are alternately consumers and producers of contents. We can highlight this aspect within the audiovisual industry. For example, if we speak about the fan activities, which are able to spread feedbacks on social media on the one hand, but on the other hand, they are able to build a process of transmedia storytelling by building new narrative world and ecosystems. This new audience, so as highlighted already by Abercrombie and Longars at the end of the 19th century, is a global audience and is a more skilled audience because the large amount of contents makes the audience able to have high expectations about the use of audiovisual contents. And so, as I said, the new audience, more discerning and more skilled, spreads feedbacks on social media platforms, sometimes through process of transmedia storytelling. And this is why the main concern of streaming platforms, of mainstreaming platforms, is about user experience. Because as we know, streaming platforms are characterized by a refined customer profiling just to please users' high expectations. And therefore, the high quality of the user experience is now strictly connected to the platform's ability to profile their tastes and consumption choices. And this makes the data dimension as crucial. Indeed, on the one hand, users provide a large amount of data on their profilings and consumption choices, which are used by the platform to track their user experiences and for marketing purposes too. On the other hand, platforms use lots of metadata just to organize the audiovisual contents, which are classified according to several criteria specific for each platform that uses its own taxonomy that potentially is useful for the business model of the platform. So starting from this brief theoretical framework about the impact of mainstreaming platforms on the audiovisual industries, we can highlight some useful aspects of the platforming process by analyzing some best practices of the audiovisual industry. First of all, we can observe that platforms in general are able to exploit market niche according to a typical feature of a long tail market, because market niche can spread on an international level thanks to the digital media. Therefore, long tail markets allow the elimination of the so-called tyranny of geography, quoting Jordanova and Cunningham, since they allow the customers to find what they are looking for within online spaces defined by Anderson as aggregators. And we can highlight this aspect within the audiovisual industry by examining the case of Mubi. Mubi is a platform that was born in 2007, so long a time ago, the pandemic of COVID-19. This is the reason why I've analyzed Mubi as a best practice. And according to the service economy, the core of the platform is the streaming service provider role for users who can enjoy a careful and accurate selection of non-mainstream films. In this way, Mubi is able to exploit the potential of a market niche that finds its sustainability on a global scale. Furthermore, as a user-based platform, the user is at the center of the platform, which follows a very user-based model. Indeed, Mubi is presented as a space in which users can enjoy the mainstream films selected and organized by the platform, but users can also meet a community of peers in this space. Moreover, users can create their own movie playlist. And in this way, the platform is able to offer a service in a prosuming perspective, because users select and organize the contents. And on the other hand, the platform is able to offer a service in a user-generated content dimension. A specific section is also dedicated to users' feeds who debate on what they have viewed on the platform, and that way generate additional contents in a very prosuming perspective. So we can observe that the mission of the platform is the media and cultural convergence highlighted by Jenkins by becoming a very digital video library of non-mainstream films that, thanks to the digitalization, could be accessible at cheap prices. So Mubi is an aggregator of non-mainstream films, and the main goal of the platform is knocking down the space-time boundaries in order to exploit a market niche. This is clear if we take a glance to the information section of the platform, of the website, which underlines that users can enjoy non-mainstream films anytime, anywhere. So Mubi wants to represent itself as a place in which you can always find what you need in terms of niche audiovisual contents beyond any time and any space, and in which you can find a community of peers that love mainstream films too. Moving from this aspect of peer-to-peer network, I've highlighted another platform. I've analyzed, another platform that is about film festival. This platform is Festival Scope, which is a platform for film festival that was born in 2011. So again, a long time before the pandemic of COVID-19. And even this platform is a very user-based platform because the platform has two kinds of interface designed for basic users and pro users. According to the platform mindset, the user is at the center of the platform. But moreover, Festival Scope is not only a streaming platform of film festival, but there is a section related to festivals organizers, because beside the double interface, there is a section of services designed for festivals managers and organizers, and the platform allows you to create your own festival online by offering support for the whole process, thanks to the collaboration with Shift 72, which is a service platform that follows digitization paths. So Festival Scope is not only a streaming platform that exploits another audiovisual niche, the film festival one, but becomes a context of co-production and co-creation of contents thanks to useful peer-to-peer networking. And another example of a peer-to-peer network on the side of VR experience is the Galaxy network, an experience in which our research group has been directly involved. Galaxy network is an experience which has been created by Diversion Cinema, which is a French company for the creation and distribution of VR products. And according to the platform mindset, Diversion Cinema has built the Galaxy network, which is a network of cultural institutions aggregated in order to organize an international VR festival in the autumn of 2021 in a very peer-to-peer dimension. The companies involved come from different areas of the world in a very international dimension, and one of the companies, cultural companies involved was Laboratorio Aperto, in which we are right now. Obviously, another one was Diversion Cinema, but the network is composed by cultural institutions coming from Spain, France, Russia, Turkey, and Germany. So this experience starts from a very platforming logic, because exploits the peer-to-peer network in a very international dimension. So moving from the analysis of best practices, we can say that platforms can have a useful impact on the audiovisual ecosystem. As I said, and as I briefly showed, platforms are able or could be able to knock down space-time boundaries. Platforms are able to exploit market niche. Platforms are able to enlarge the audience according to the global dimension, and platforms are able or could be able to build peer-to-peer networks. But on the other side, as Tommaso Fabri has already shown at the beginning of this discussion, we can highlight some critical issues arising from the impact of platforms even in the audiovisual ecosystem. For example, if we consider the mainstreaming platforms, we can obviously observe that the user experience is influenced by algorithms that organize the audiovisual contents and the user experience too. So on the one hand, the platform model supports the active role of users from a prosumer perspective. But on the other hand, user experience is guided and mediated by the platform that organizes metadata with a very human gaze and with several criteria potentially influenced by biases, by several biases. So platforms act as filters and as non-neutral intermediaries within user experience, because quoting Avezzu, an Italian researcher, about the cultural consumption, data are never meaningless. And this could have a strong effect in terms of culture consumption, because this could produce participation bubbles in which one communicates with those who have a point of view or taste already very similar to their own, according to a polarized collaborative individualism rather than a real sense of community. If we consider the mainstreaming platforms, there is also another risk connected to the editorial perspective. As we know, the main streaming platforms nowadays are connected to main American company, and this could have an effect on the editorial perspective, which is an American editorial perspective, or more specifically, a Silicon Valley perspective, we can say. And then if we consider again mainstreaming platforms like Netflix, the most famous one, we can observe that they often have some geographical limitations too. So users see different contents in different areas of the world. So even if platforms are able on the one hand to knock down space-time boundaries, there is also a risk of enforcing geographical boundaries and creating geographical bubbles too. And some potential risks are finally connected to the heterogeneity of the catalog, because even if streaming platforms often promote the active role of users in terms of content selection, the catalog, as I've already said, is often shown through some filters and categories that are based on different criteria preselected by the platform. These criteria are often connected to previous user experiences, to the similarity of contents, and obviously to the business model of the platform. And specifically, those criteria based on similarity tend to reduce the complexity of a catalog. So in conclusion, based on the theoretical framework and the in-depth analysis of best practices, we can highlight that the impact of platforms on the audiovisual industry and its identity is becoming more and more relevant. On the one hand, we can see that the impact of platforms on the audiovisual industry can be useful by several points of view. In fact, platforms are able to knock down space-time boundaries. They could enlarge the audience on a global scale. They could allow collaboration between peers, and they could exploit market niche. But on the other hand, we need to highlight and make a reflection about the potential critical issues arising from the non-neutral inclusion of a third entity, the platform, in the experience of production, distribution, and use of audiovisual contents. Because as it is already happening in other fields, such as the communication one, this inclusion can have strong effects in terms of economic, social, and cultural trends. And I think that this could be points for the discussion with the audience too. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antonella. And I think, again, there was plenty of food for thought, as they say. In particular, I'd like to stress two things. First, I like the notion and metaphor because it's easier for us to associate the concept of digital platform to audiovisual because we are all getting used to, of course, Netflix and the like. But actually, you know, that doesn't mean that this point of observation that that we had with this focus on audiovisual didn't really give us a lot of things to reflect on with CLAP. And actually, coming back to the beginning of my comment, this metaphor of the Fordist versus the contemporary ways of producing and consuming culture, I think is quite a good fit and makes us easier to understand the transition that we're living in and the possibilities that come from the transition from a linear way of producing and consuming culture to a more circular and interactive way of producing and consuming culture. And the other notion that I found very interesting was this idea of platforms allowing us to exploit, to use a term that Tommaso used before, niches along the long tail concept that comes from, you know, Anderson, if I'm not mistaken, at the very beginning, right? So, and that comes back to my very initial comment at the beginning of the event of the possibilities given by digital technologies and platforms in particular to help, you know, small-sized companies in the value chains of all the industries on culture and creative industries to scale up and reach larger audiences and reach, you know, a large differentiated geographical market. The question I have in my mind is that what's, you know, the alternative of a platform that we have looked at in audiovisual to something which in origin is a piece of art in a museum. So, you know, I'm thinking about the non-functional tokens evolution with blockchain and these very interesting private markets for NFTs in which traditional museums are starting to enter with a very good profit, if I'm not mistaken. So this public-private boundary comes back as a reflection. This is something that I've taken home, but as I said, this afternoon we'll explore more. Now we open up a few minutes of interaction and a free flow conversation with the team here. And of course, you know, from the audience, if you feel like contributing or asking questions, and also from the people connected online, you can either use the chat function in Zoom or the Q&A function in Zoom, or you can ask for an intervention and we'll give you voice. So my first question for Vittorio and Tommaso, are we finished or was it the beginning? And if it was the beginning, what could be a next step for CLAP? Like, you know, what else can we investigate? What else has remained still unclear in our minds? And what else would be curious to explore in the next iteration of CLAP?
Well, I start. As I said, I think that many of the tensions that we have highlighted so far point to the need in a way to keep up, and this is like knowledge and experience, to keep up with what's happening in many cultural and not necessarily maybe also non-cultural segments regarding the dynamics of digital transformation and more precisely on the platformization of business models. The other is that it's not everything can be business, because the long tail it can be a way of being somewhere in a repository that nobody listens to. So is it possible to safeguard cultural production and variety, even if it's not that performative in economic terms, which is a point that maybe the policymakers should take care of. But of course, this calls for a totally different, perspective and maybe tools of cultural policymaking, because it's a kind of practice that is that need to keep up with the technical aspects of the thing. So the NFTs might be a solution for making money out of, but that's not the only fruition. That's buying and selling. How about the fruition of that pieces of art?
Thank you. Yes, it's surely only a starting point. Yeah, obviously. But I think it's not only a starting point for research, but more important is it's a sort of alliance between the horizons pointed by this research and the way in which we can together conceive a new way to manage the offline and online activities. This is, I think, one of the most important points that we have not stressed now, but perhaps this afternoon we will present some practices, some good practices that could be also another food for thought. Yeah, but it's a starting point. So it's, let me say, an aesthetical, a cultural, an economical, but also a political enterprise or challenge, because we are talking about something that changes our daily life and also the relationship between the power that we engage or that we have with some big enterprises or with the control that we all experience every day. So I think that is a larger question. We take only a little part of this changing world, but on the other hand, platforming existed also before the digital turn. So we are not, this is not something new. So platforming is in a certain way something that express a stable, something concrete, concrete in terms also that is made by something stable, stable, I don't know, okay, but to give a common place to transaction and interaction. This is, I think, in the core what we have to change, probably to innovate. Yeah, this is something that is at the core of our goals. Okay.
Thank you very much, both. Actually, Vittorio, the stock exchange at the beginning was mostly made of bricks and mortar. Now it's gone global and digital, but actually the importance of physical spaces that can be themselves, platforms for interaction and collaboration, like for instance is the notion of this very place we're actually performing this out of. I think it's a good prompt that you are giving. So can I take this as an invitation also to the city of Modena that you know, we are ready to continue if they want to as well, and we'll you know, get into a conversation with the city of Modena to understand whether we want to give some more further legs to this club program in due course after the publication of the final outputs of the program. Another question I would like to hear from you on is this notion of ecosystems, because I think that when it comes to innovation, ecosystems nowadays, not only literature, but in reality have become common understanding of the way in which different actors can interact together to generate systematic innovation. And the notion of ecosystem, of course, is motivated from nature, but when it comes to you know, the value chain or the supply chain of innovation, what is in argument is the tension between local ecosystems for innovation. So at the city level, for instance, and so, you know, the question here could go towards the root of, is the city of Modena well equipped in terms of local ecosystem for innovating arts and culture? That is one thing that I would like to hear your views on. And the other one is how a local ecosystem in itself doesn't have all the resources or ideas or talents or access to finance necessary to generate innovation. And so it needs to connect to other local ecosystems for innovation or to a global ecosystems for innovation. Of course, in this regard, digital technologies help to connect. Then, you know, we might argue whether it is more effective a local ecosystem and the working of a local ecosystem versus a global ecosystem, which is, you know, by definition, a little bit more weak in terms of the ties and the relationships between the actors. But, you know, one thing at a time. So starting from Modena, Tommaso, Vittorio, you are involved, of course, in university, but in many other you know, institutions here in Modena with different roles and different hats. So you have a very good overview on how Modena is equipped and what it might still lack.
Wow, that's difficult. I think we are well positioned. I think Modena has a lot of vitality, both on the you know, private bodies part and on the institutional side. I know there's been in the past, also in the literature, some tentative measuring of the creativity or the capacity of generating innovation in some kind of unity of analysis that could be a city, big or small. And I came to prefer eventually talking about processes rather than entities. So I think that we have many links and we have many assets that can be brought to, that can be leveraged on. There's been a coach of the volley team here, which was very famous, that brought the national team to the Olympic Games, that to the question, how is it to be a winner? He said, you become a winner by winning. So I think the point is making and trying to point to some good achievements. And I think we have all the institutional, cultural, and economic assets that are needed.
So let's take seriously the word or the concept of ecosystem. That is a metaphor. Yeah, okay. This is a system who support and sustain a sort of variety of actors. Yeah? In these terms, we need infrastructures, but also relationship, able to give the possibility to the big actors, the strong actors, and the little one, so to interact and to survive. This is, I think, something that is not what Modena, but not only Modena, has acted in the last years. So what means in the cultural fields that we have big theaters, we have big actors, we have enterprises, so strong actors in the cultural fields who are very strong because there is a support and financial, and not only financial support, but if they are too strong, the other ecosystem could die. So I think this is a very important challenge for the future, because from the bottom, we can have the most important suggestion for the future. So the experimentation, for example. So in this dialogue, I think we have to work on, and I think this is one of the most difficult challenges for a city, and a modern city and contemporary cities now.
Yes, yes, on a different scale, but of course we have something that can be worked on, but we need to connect. That was, I mean, with networks all over, like the network we are talking to today.
Yeah, and in fact, I think the possibility of connecting to an international network of cities, all, let's say, not struggling, but facing the same challenges or questions, you know, how do we increase the chances that our cultural heritage and our cultural assets can be at the service of a renewed sense of identity for citizens, but also, you know, becoming assets for further entrepreneurship development and economic development in and for the cities. I think it's an opportunity for Modena to really tap into the experiences of other cities all across the world, and to learn from it, and also, of course, to contribute with the experimentations that will be performed in the coming years in the city of Modena. I think that I have tortured you enough, and we can now take stock of the fact that we don't have any questions from people connected online, and I don't see any questions coming from the audience here. So I think it's good to wrap up. And thank you very much for this very interesting morning session. I think it was what we expected it to be, dense and interesting. And we look forward to the afternoon session, which will be led by Vittorio. We'll see again Valeria and Antonella performing on stage. So thank you very much for those coming here at the Laboratorio Aperto, and for those connecting remotely, for your participation and your engagement. And have a great day.